This is Dawn Warburton. Thank you for watching my presentation of the research project, Understanding Dyslexia. With 1 in 5 students having a diagnosis of dyslexia, teachers must face a prominent issue daily. A variety of factors in public education, including limited finances, high-stake testing, lack of time, often make it difficult for teachers to obtain specialized training that will help them properly educate those students with a disability. This study asked Massachusetts licensed teachers to take part in a survey about their training and how they teach students with dyslexia. The purpose of this study was to define if teachers understand the definition of dyslexia and if they have taken part in any training. Additionally, it was important to know if teachers are providing specially designed instructions that meet the unique needs of the student and are based on their disability so they can access the general curriculum and work alongside their non-disabled peers. The results of this study helped develop a professional development handout for teachers and administrators that debunk the myths surrounding dyslexia and produce an effective and appropriate educational program for students with dyslexia. The research question presented was, what does a professional development handout for teachers and administrators look like that educates and outlines an effective and appropriate educational program for students with dyslexia? The basis for this study started with my younger brother. On a summer day in August of 1999, I learned that my 12-year-old brother was reading at the level of a second grader. We learned through testing and reviewing his academic paperwork that he had dyslexia. Through investigatory work, taking workshops, reading books, talking to professionals, I learned that many of the educators who worked with my brother were not familiar with what dyslexia was, and they were not familiar with the proper ways to provide an education to a student with dyslexia. Most educators and administrators do not receive any specific training about dyslexia. With the adoption of the Common Core standards, most states spend a great deal of their professional development focusing on preparing students for standardized testing instead of plain old-fashioned learning. Common Core and standardized testing tend to be the primary focus of professional development for regular education teachers. They often rely on their special education counterparts to provide them with the necessary information to educate a student in their classroom with dyslexia. The purpose of this study was to try to answer the question, what does a professional development handout for teachers and administrators that outlines an effective and appropriate educational program for students with dyslexia look like? Teachers often lack the time to conduct enough research or to find resources to help their students. This research will try to combine the most up-to-date information about dyslexia and educating students in the general classroom to put the relevant information quickly into the hands of those who need it. The purpose of this study is to try to dispel the myths that many general education instructors have regarding dyslexia. By attending to this research, teachers, administrators, and even parents could positively change the outcome for a sizable percentage of students with disabilities. Developing a handout with information about dyslexia myths, as well as other resources, could benefit teachers because they are the people on the front lines of learning. They have a direct impact on the outcome of a student's life in and out of school. If a teacher understands how to educate a student with dyslexia, they can help lead that student down a path to a successful life, and whether that is a college or in a career. It is important that teachers understand that many of the myths they have believed in are false. A lengthy literature review was conducted to look at current research in the world of learning disabilities, specifically regarding dyslexia. The term dyslexia denotes a neurobiological-oriented learning disability whereby the person has difficulty with word recognition, word spelling, and word decoding, which in turn affects other reading capabilities, such as vocabulary growth and reading comprehension. This definition was agreed upon in 2002 by the International Dyslexia Association. Before and after that time, numerous studies have been carried out relating to the functional arrangement of the normal systems of the brain. That existing research analyzes the compensatory brain processes that change as poor readers acquire reading skills. The ability of people to acquire and apply language is completely different from their ability to acquire reading skills and different from the process necessary for fluent reading. Thus, reading is a learned activity that is significantly different from that of acquiring language, which is equivalent to improving or activating pre-existing abilities in the brain. Additionally, in Ben Foss's Dyslexia Empowerment Plan, which is informed by his own experiences after struggling with dyslexia, he outlines 3 stages which can help teachers, parents, and most importantly, students with dyslexia. He identifies creating a child's profile where identifying strengths and weaknesses to help understand a child's behavior. By doing this and creating a strength-based document, it reduces the chances of a child to feel inadequate or ashamed about his or her weaknesses. It focuses on the strong points, which are critical towards establishing an effective learning program. The second step involves supporting the child and helping them overcome their fears. Foss recommends that parents and teachers train the child to love him or herself, to build confidence, resiliency, self-awareness. The third stage involves developing the community or surrounding the child. Foss argues a broken system will set the child to failure. The child should be made aware of his or her weaknesses, but also applauded for his strengths and provided the tools necessary to learn. The study design included using surveys with the teachers and a focus group with parents. This helped identify the beliefs, misconceptions, and understandings about dyslexia. The responses to the multiple choice survey questions provided statistical data that was used to measure and report on what the teachers knew and to develop a handout. It was also used to identify the need for further research. The research study strategies employed were done to ensure validity, including surveying a group of licensed Massachusetts teachers, a focus group with parents of children diagnosed with dyslexia, and finally creating a handout for teachers or for parents. The survey and focus group information was used to determine an in-depth look at what people knew. The main participant of this study was licensed current classroom teachers in Massachusetts. This survey was sent to members of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. The goal was to have a response between 1% to 5% from this group. The second group of study participants will be parents of children diagnosed with dyslexia. Parents tend to be very knowledgeable about their child's disability and understand what are myths and what are truths. The parents will participate in a focus group and answer questions regarding their experiences with general education teachers. The data collection was obtained through a sample of the teaching population in the Commonwealth. To gain honest answers, the survey participants were asked not to divulge personal information and were given an opportunity to leave comments they felt were important in relation to the survey questions. This information was analyzed over a period of from January 2016 to May of 2017. The survey consisted of simple questions, and participants were given 30 days to complete the survey. A reminder was sent out 2 days before the due date. After completion of the survey, the information was analyzed to develop the percentages of what teachers did and did not understand about dyslexia. The data was also used to develop questions for the parent focus group. Although the parents were not given as lengthy of a list of questions, they were asked to focus on the myths and fallacies that they had experienced through their contact with general education teachers. The information from this study identified the vast number of myths that teachers are experiencing and passing on to the students with disabilities in their classroom. There is a great deal of existing research that has been conducted which explains what dyslexia is and how to teach a student with dyslexia. However, no one has asked teachers if they understand this research and how to implement it in their classrooms. The results of the survey data revealed that many of the participants lack a true understanding of the diagnosis of dyslexia and its implication for their students. 197 participants completed and submitted the survey. The participants included 48% of teachers with over 15 years experience teaching, making them highly qualified to answer the questions presented. It was also important to understand if any undergraduate or graduate student work had been completed, whether teachers had taken coursework or professional development pertaining to dyslexia. Over 50% had limited post-secondary experience, and 74% had taken 0 professional development programs with a focus solely on dyslexia. After determining participants' skill level and ascertaining where they may have developed an understanding of dyslexia, the survey questions focused on the student makeup in the classroom. The research found that over 61% of the classroom had over 20 students. With 1 in 5 students having dyslexia, the average classroom has between 2 to 4 students with dyslexia, which is a considerable number. When asked to identify how many students in the classroom had dyslexia, the number did not correlate based on current research. A significant percentage of teachers said that it was not a term used by the school. Therefore, they could not identify the number of students in their classroom. In anticipation of this response, a follow-up question was asked later in the survey to determine if personal understanding that dyslexia is a valid disability and is included in the Individuals with Disabilities Act. The answers were evenly split. Many of the participants were not aware that dyslexia can be found in the laws that regulate how children with learning disabilities are educated in the public school setting. The survey was also designed to determine the level of confidence that an educator had when providing instruction to students with dyslexia. The first question was to rank knowledge about dyslexia and the ability to support learning. This question shows an elevated level of educators who do not identify dyslexia in their facilities or rely on the special education staff. This correlates with the small number of educators who have received training specific to dyslexia. After determining the confidence level of teachers, a broader question was asked to learn if their lack of education may translate into lack of knowledge. Over 50% of the survey respondents were identified as feeling that they could use more training. But interestingly, 40% felt they were average to highly qualified in their knowledge of dyslexia. Comparable results were found when assessing the security level of teaching dyslexic students. Teachers feel they need more training, and 71% feel less than secure in teaching students who do have. The parent focus group was designed to further assess what myths were highly present in the classroom or parents' interactions with teachers working with their students. The group consisted of parents of children with dyslexia. Although the parents were not provided a survey, they were asked to answer the question, dyslexia is not. An extensive list of myths surrounding dyslexia, which are detrimental to students, was provided in their responses. Many indicated that they had heard from teachers that dyslexia meant laziness, stupidity, that you outgrow dyslexia, or other defining characteristics that do not appropriately define what dyslexia is. Parents' responses confirmed that teachers continue to be misled by untruthful and negative information about dyslexia. After a review of the teacher and parent responses, it seems that the specific solution needed was a teacher handout. However, there is already significant information in print that talks about dyslexia, how to write goals for individual education plans, the type of scientifically based reading program students with dyslexia need to be provided access to learning. However, all of this has not forced a decline in the myths surrounding dyslexia. It seems that the appropriate material that teachers need to be presented is a written guide that debunks each dyslexia myth. This workbook will dispel those myths and hope to make a change by educating educators on what dyslexia is not. Teachers cannot be expected to educate students appropriately if they are running their classrooms on inaccuracies. Hopefully, this information will disseminate across the Commonwealth, making it easier for parents to obtain the appropriate services for their children during individual education plan meetings. The survey results and parent focus group have shown that before a child can receive a proper education, those who are directly working with the student must be educated in what dyslexia truly is and is not. If the foundation for an education is built on sand, the plan will certainly crumble. To build a solid foundation, the handout I have created breaks down the myths one by one and provides a brief synopsis of the correct information. The primary audience is the 70,000 plus teachers in the Commonwealth of the state of Massachusetts. The handout will provide teachers with solid information from professionals in the field of dyslexia. It will provide additional resources to learn about the proper way to provide an education to students in their classrooms who have dyslexia. By eliminating the myths, students will have access to an education comparable to that of their peers. Additionally, students will have the opportunity to make effective progress and to receive an education designed to meet his or her unique needs. Parents will have a resource to provide to general education teachers who are unfamiliar with dyslexia. Parents will be directly contributing to debunking the myths surrounding dyslexia that are negatively impacting their child's ability to learn and access the curriculum. The workbook will include a definition of dyslexia. It will include several myths, including dyslexia being characterized by reading backwards or reversing letters, that it is a blanket term, that the school cannot use the term dyslexia, or that dyslexia will be outgrown as the child ages. Very importantly, it will help dispel the myth that dyslexia means that a child is lazy, stupid, or unmotivated. It will also help teachers understand that students with dyslexia are motivated to learn, that they do not need medication in order to be able to access the curriculum, that they do not need to work harder, that they are already working extremely hard. They need to be provided with an education that meets their needs. Here are some of the myths that will be outlined in the workbook /handout.